time for the Cowboys mailbag, where we dive into all the latest questions from fans. First up, we've got Mighty Ant 0215 asking about the Texans' decision to pay early and lock in their player before the market got even more expensive. That question refers to Derek Stingley's deal, and honestly, the Texans got it right. By moving fast, they avoided the price hike that comes with waiting for other players like Sauce Gardner and Trent McDuffie to reset the market. What might seem like an overpayment today often turns into a bargain tomorrow, especially in a league where elite cornerbacks are highly valued. That's the nature of the business. Teams that hesitate end up paying even more. Yet, the Cowboys always seem to lag behind, offering last year's money instead of adapting to current market trends. It's a pattern we've seen before, and unless they change their approach, they'll continue missing out on opportunities to secure top-tier talent at reasonable prices. Now, moving on, CJ DeYoung 3 raises an interesting point about the value of running backs in the draft. There's been a perception that teams have moved away from drafting backs in the first round, but the reality is a bit more complex. Yes, the market for running backs took a hit over the past few years, but last season proved that when the talent is undeniable, teams are still willing to invest early. Think about it this way. NFL franchises started realizing they could either spend big money on a proven running back like Saquon Barkley or find a similarly talented player on a much cheaper rookie contract. That kind of market correction was inevitable. But here's the catch. When a running back is truly special, teams won't hesitate to pull the trigger in the first round. This year's draft class is incredibly deep at the position, which could impact how high individual backs go. Ironically, that depth might push some talented runners lower on the board simply because teams know they can still land a high-quality player later in the draft. But make no mistake, someone will take Ashton Janney in the first round. He's simply too good to fall past that range. And there's a real chance that another back sneaks into the late first round as well. The question is, who? Will it be Henderson? Will it be Judkins? There are a handful of guys who could push their way into that conversation, but even if they don't go on day one, expect them to be off the board early in round 2. A skeptical fan asks about the Cowboys' approach to the offensive line, defensive tackle, and cornerback positions. Let's start with the offensive line. Right now, it feels like Dallas is done making major moves there outside of maybe a day 3 pick in the draft. They've got their 5 starters locked in. They have Brock Hoffman as depth. They seem to like a Sim Richards, and they even brought in Robert Jones. Unless something drastic changes, they'll likely roll with what they have. But defensive tackle? That's a different story. If the Cowboys are serious about being a run-stopping team, they absolutely need another run-stuffing presence up front. So far, they've done very little to address that need, and it's concerning. Signing Robert Jones isn't enough, and the defensive tackles currently on the roster don't exactly scream dominant run defenders. That's a problem, especially for a team that keeps emphasizing the importance of stopping the run. As for cornerback, that's a clear area of need as well. You have to get another corner in there, no question about it. Depth at the position is crucial, and the Cowboys can't afford to neglect it. Speaking of roster construction, another fan asks for an overall grade on the team's free agency performance so far. Honestly, it's been average. If we're grading based on the Cowboys' usual approach, it might be an A+, but compared to the rest of the NFL, it's more like a B- or C+. They've made some solid moves, but nothing groundbreaking. The offseason isn't over yet, so there's still time to improve, but as things stand, it hasn't exactly been a home run. Marcus Arnold brings up the idea of trading for Courtland Sutton and whether he'd be worth a contract extension of $25 million per year. In theory, having a top receiver locked in for the next 4 years sounds great. Sutton is a talented player, and Dallas has shown interest in him in the past. But the problem isn't with the Cowboys, it's with Denver. Why would the Broncos make that trade? Unless they're getting a significant return, like a first-round pick or a pick swap that really benefits them, it just doesn't make sense. Denver already has issues at wide receiver, and trading Sutton would only make their situation worse. If anything, they should be looking to extend him, not ship him off. The only way a deal like this happens is if Denver decides to completely tear things down and start over, which doesn't seem likely at this point. D-Lunatic asks about possible trade-down scenarios for the Cowboys. The tricky part here is finding a team that's willing to move up. Unless a team like Pittsburgh gets desperate for a quarterback and wants to jump up to pick 12, the options for a trade-down aren't immediately obvious. Could a team like Arizona or Atlanta fall in love with a defender and want to move up a few spots? Maybe. Could the Chargers, Denver, or Pittsburgh make a move if a player like Janney is still on the board? That's another possibility. Green Bay could also be a factor if there's a receiver or corner they really like. But if that's the case, wouldn't the Cowboys also be interested in that same player? That's what makes this situation so tricky. Trading down only works if another team is willing to give up value to move up, and right now, there aren't a ton of obvious candidates for that kind of deal. Noah asks about the chances of Tyler Warren, Ashton Janney, or Teteroa McMillan being available when the Cowboys pick in the first round. The odds? Pretty decent that at least one of them will still be there. If we're talking about two of them still being on the board, the chances go down a bit, probably no higher than 50%. And if we're talking about all three being available, that's close to zero. Janney is a guy that teams like the Raiders and Bears could target. The Patriots might prioritize an offensive tackle over a receiver at pick 4, but they could still be a threat. The Raiders, Panthers, and Saints also stand out as teams that could be interested in McMillan. As for Warren, tight ends are always a bit unpredictable, but the Jets, Bears, and even the 49ers could be dark horse candidates to take him. If I had a bet, I'd say Warren has the highest chance of going in the top 15, especially with the Colts sitting at pick 14. There's plenty more to discuss, but one thing is clear: the Cowboys still have a lot of work to do before the draft. Whether it's making another move in free agency, finding the right prospects, or exploring trade opportunities, the next few weeks will be critical in shaping the roster for the upcoming season. Let's shift the conversation toward the Cowboys' draft strategy and how it ties into free agency. One fan brought up a key question: are the Cowboys done making moves in free agency? And the answer is probably, at least for now. Unless something unexpected pops up, it looks like the big spending is over. Maybe they'll make some depth signings or take a flyer on a veteran after the draft, but don't count on any major deals before then. Financially, they've been conservative. Even with contracts like Dante Fowler's, they barely cracked that $6 million mark. The Cowboys aren't going all in this offseason. They're focused on the long game. And honestly, part of the reason they're quiet on the free agency front is simple roster math. Right now, the Cowboys already have 74 players under contract. That's the second most in the entire NFL. Add in the 10 draft picks they're expected to make, and you're looking at 84 out of the 90 total spots already spoken for. Sure, they can cut some guys and create a little space, but with such a crowded roster already, it makes sense they're not in a rush to add more bodies. It's all about managing depth and avoiding cap issues in the future. So prediction time. How many more free agents will they sign before the draft? Honestly, 0 is a very real possibility. If you're hoping for a splash signing, it might be best to temper expectations. The front office appears to be waiting for the draft to address their most urgent needs, which brings us to the prospects themselves. A question came in about Omarion Hampton potentially going to the Cowboys at pick number 12. Here's the deal. Hampton is a great player, easily one of the top 2 running backs in this draft. But that spot, it just feels like a reach. Not because he lacks talent, but because running back as a position doesn't carry the same weight as edge rusher, corner, offensive tackle, or even wide receiver in today's NFL. When you're picking that high, you want a player who not only has elite ability, but also impacts the game from a premium position. That's the dilemma with backs like Hampton. He could very well become a star, but will he bring more value to the team than, say, an elite edge rusher or corner sitting on the board at the same time? Probably not. And to be clear, it's not about underrating Hampton's game. He's explosive, decisive, and tough to bring down. But the Cowboys can find another very good running back later in the draft. Maybe not one quite as talented as Hampton, but close enough that the value makes more sense. If you can get a slightly lesser back in the 3rd round while using that first pick on a premium position, that's a win. That's smart roster building. Now let's dive into some of the draft sleepers being discussed. A few names popped up, and they're worth highlighting. There's Phil Maffa, the running back from Clemson. He's not getting a lot of buzz right now, but his combination of size, vision, and physicality make him a potential steal on day 3. Then there's Kyle Williams from SMU, a wide receiver with great hands and underrated route running. Another intriguing name is Brandon Dixon, an offensive tackle out of Florida. Not a household name by any means, but he's got the raw traits coaches love to develop. Elijah Roberts is another name to watch. Also out of SMU, he plays defensive end and brings that classic tweener size, big enough to hold up on the edge, quick enough to provide some inside versatility. And finally, Teddy Banyan from Cal. He's a linebacker with great speed and good range, but still a work in progress when it comes to diagnosing plays. Still, for a day 3 pick, he offers plenty of upside. That's the theme here. These guys might not be stars right away, but they bring traits worth betting on. And while we're on the topic of draft evaluations, there's been a lot of discussion about Teteroa McMillan and the so-called fall he's having. Some fans are getting nervous, asking what's going on and whether he's still worth a first-round pick. Let me just say this, don't overthink it. Trust your first evaluation. McMillan might not be the flashiest athlete, but he's tall, fluid, and smoother than people give him credit for. He's not slow, and he can get separation. Just because he's not a jitterbug in space doesn't mean he can't dominate at the next level. And it's not just McMillan. There's a broader sense that this wide receiver class isn't generating the kind of buzz it deserves. Luther Burden is another name that seems to be slipping, and honestly, it's hard to say why. There's no major injury, no reported character red flags. It just seems like teams are getting too caught up in overanalysis. Sometimes, the NFL makes things harder than they need to be. Just take the good players. Well, Johnson is another one that fits that mold. He's got the traits, he's got the tape, and yet, some evaluators are nitpicking him to death. It's the same story every year. Remember Brian Branch? He slid down the board for reasons that didn't make much sense, and now he's proving people wrong. The same thing could happen here. Don't overcomplicate the process. Evaluate what's on the field, and take the best football players. Another fan question asked about what Diggs might be looking for in terms of contract demands. The number being floated is $15 million for 1 year, and for the Cowboys, that's probably too much. Even with a little cap flexibility, they're not likely to go that high for a cornerback, especially one who might only be a short-term option. That's just not how they operate. They'll let the market settle and reassess if the price comes down, but at that figure, it's probably a no-go. Lastly, let's talk about team building and how the Cowboys are positioning themselves for the draft. Right now, they're sitting with a nearly full roster and 10 draft picks on the way. That means most of their final moves will come through the draft, not free agency. It also means they'll have to make tough choices. Some veterans and fringe roster guys are going to be cut to make room for rookies. It's a balancing act, and the front office has to weigh short-term depth versus long-term upside. So as we move closer to draft day, keep an eye on the positions they've yet to fully address. Defensive tackle is one. Cornerback is another. And even though they've built up the offensive line depth, a late-round flyer at tackle or interior guard could still be in play. The Cowboys might be quiet right now, but that silence could be the calm before a very calculated storm on draft weekend. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Could the Dallas Cowboys be on the verge of making a blockbuster move to bolster their offensive line? Tristan Worfs, the elite tackle who has anchored the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' protection for years, is now at the center of intense speculation. Despite recently signing a record-breaking contract extension, rumors suggest that Dallas is exploring ways to land the two-time first-team All-Pro. With the Cowboys desperate to reinforce their trenches and provide better protection for Dak Prescott, Wirfs could be the missing piece in their pursuit of a Super Bowl run. While acquiring Wirfs would be a massive coup for the Cowboys, the financial and trade logistics remain complex. Having made history as the highest-paid offensive lineman in NFL history, any move would likely require Dallas to restructure existing contracts or make significant roster sacrifices. However, the prospect of adding a generational talent to their line could be too tempting to ignore. Given the team's history of making bold moves, Jerry Jones and company might be willing to take an aggressive approach if Wirfs becomes available. As speculation continues to grow, one thing is certain. If the Cowboys manage to land Wirfs, it would send shockwaves through the NFL. His ability to dominate both at right and left tackle would instantly elevate the Cowboys' offense and solidify their status as legitimate Super Bowl contenders. With the NFL offseason full of surprises, all eyes are now on Dallas to see if they can pull off one of the biggest trades in recent memory. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.